Good afternoon and welcome to this Inbound Logistics video podcast presented by Inbound Logistics Magazine. Our guests today are Chris KANE and Andrew BYER, and we're talking about the art of the 3PL shipper relationship. Here is our host, Amy Roach.
Thank you, Jeff, and welcome, gentlemen. Chris, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. We're going to dive into all things 3PL and 3PL shipper relationships. But first, I just want to ask you both to introduce yourselves and share a little bit of your background and experiences in the 3PL sphere. Chris, I'll start with you.
Sure. I grew up in the third-party logistics business. My family operated a 3PL for going into 4 generations over 90 years. And we took it from a local business to a regional and then national. And then ultimately, we were acquired by a global 3PL company. So not wanting, once you get this diesel fuel smell and it's hard to leave logistics. There's so much going on. So I started 3PL RX with my son. My son is a technology guy, especially in AI. So what we're doing, we're working with small and growing 3PLs just in all the key areas of their business to help them. And we use both technology for those needs and then also my experience with my years, almost over 30 years in the business. So we're having fun, we're providing some value, and we're learning every day. So we read Inbound Logistics, so this is a great opportunity for us to connect. And we have a lot of respect for Andrew, who I want to be upfront. Procter & Gamble is a longtime customer of ours, and they made us better. I tell people all the time that they're a great company and they're a pleasure to serve. So I think you've got a great panelist with Andrew here as well.
Fantastic. All right, Andrew, tell us a little bit about yourself. I don't know if you had that diesel smell also, but
diesel and fragrances and all sorts of things that go with shipping consumer products. My name is Andrew BYER. I worked at P&G for more than 39 years. I've worked across the supply chain, so supplier-facing roles, manufacturing and operational roles, planning roles, transportation and warehousing, business-facing roles, and customer-facing roles, just truly across the supply chain. And, really understand the importance of warehousing and shipping in terms of getting the business to our customers. I also had the opportunity to work across the world. Spent 12 years outside the US, and I've been in global jobs. So I really understand supply chains. And finally, thing I might add is the last 5 years I was at P&G, I led our supply chain know-how licensing. So I had the opportunity to work with about 100 companies outside of P&G, really under the hood and how they operate and how they ship. So familiar with industries outside of CPG, things like pharma and life sciences and agriculture and oil and gas. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here today.
Fantastic. Well, you guys have a wealth of knowledge, and I'm really glad to have both perspectives here. I think it's easy to, kind of stay in your lane of I'm the shipper or I'm the 3PL, and really it's, collaboration that is the key. So what would you say, I guess, are the key ingredients of a successful 3PL shipper relationship? And Andrew, if you want to start, kind of from the shipper side, that would be great.
Okay, thank you, Amy. The first thing I'd say, the relationship between a shipper and a 3PL is not unlike any other relationship. The foundation is going to be mutual trust and respect. Think about it. We're in business together. We're partners. There's got to be mutual trust and respect. It's just the foundation. The second thing I think is really important is clear and common objectives to successfully ship the business. That's the foundation, right? Being on time, being in full and at target cost. But objectives can go beyond that base. Like if a shipper is looking to get more innovative or move more volume to B2C, and the 3PL is not looking to grow in those areas, it wouldn't be a match, right? The final thing I think about in terms of a successful relationship is that both sides are coming out ahead, right? There's joint value creation. Both the shipper and the 3PL need to make money. We never want to be in a relationship where the 3PL is not making a sufficient margin, because we know if they're not going to be around for a while. That's probably how I'd look at a successful relationship.
Great. Chris, does that kind of resonate with, what you've seen throughout your career?
Absolutely. I think, as Andrew said, trust is foremost in any relationship. But a 3PL relationship with the customer, it's like a marriage. I mean, they're hard to unwind, and they're expensive, and you really need to have a lot of trust. And you've got to. The one thing I would add too is communication. You've got to over communicate, especially as a 3PL, because our customers, are busy, manufacturing or selling products, and they're relying on us to get their products out the door and meeting on time, in full, and all the guidelines that their customers put on them. And the last thing I would like to say is that it has to be the right match. Like there's certain customers that we would send the RFP back and say, you know what, it's not a fit. We'd love to do business with you, but we're not doing the scope of work that you're looking for. And, we don't want to tarnish our reputation. So there's got to be a good fit because, those ones will be the long-term relationships that last.
Yeah, okay, that's a great point, Chris. When you say that, we're not a fit, and maybe you would not go forward with the business with the RFP, I guess what are some of those elements that go into it? What makes a fit or not a fit from your perspective?
We used to get a lot for chemicals, and we were a food and consumer products company, and you would get an RFP for explosives or highly flammable chemicals, and that just didn't tie with our customer base. So we would pass on that, or a customer you would want a lot of like e-commerce fulfillment, and if you weren't doing it, that's not something you can just set up overnight. And so I think smart 3PLs know their business, they know what they do well. That's where they provide the greatest value, because at the end of the day, a 3PL has to deliver value, or the shipper, the customer will find someone else that does. So I think just staying in your lane, we used to say, is but once you get in your lane, you want to be in the passing lane and growing and servicing your customers.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Andrew, I'm going to jump back to something you said too. I like how you said that, both the shipper and the 3PL have to be making money.
Yep.
So I think it's easy to assume that there's maybe this adversarial, the shipper is going to want to beat up the 3PL on cost all the time, but really there should be some synergy there, right? Is what you're saying?
Absolutely. We expect our business partners to make money.
Yeah.
Right. And if we're hitting our goals and we're hitting our cost targets and they're growing, like Chris was just talking about, we expect them to make more money. And that also means, Chris also mentioned the long-term relationship, and hard to extricate. We want our partners to be financially sound because they'll be around for us when we need them. So that's just an adult business deal. You're going to make money, we're going to make money, and we're going to jointly grow value.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that. Okay, let's talk a little bit about mistakes. What do you think are the most common mistakes that you see both shippers or 3PLs making, that can damage that relationship and that partnership?
I'll let the customer go first on this one.
All right. A couple of things come to mind, and I don't want to be too academic, but one easy mistake is the tricky area of thinking you've got agreement on metrics, but you don't actually have the agreement on what the measures are. Right? So metrics are things like service and cost. Okay, yeah, we understand they're important. Measures get into the specifics. Actually, how do you measure it? What data are you going to use? What's the source of the data? What are the targets or action limits or triggers? Right? If you want an example of this, I've seen 3PLs who couldn't ship to meet the original customer delivery appointment, and they'll call the customer to rearrange it, and they'll hit the rearranged date, and then they consider themselves as having provided service and met the target. We would say absolutely not. You missed the customer's original request, right? So that's an example of a tricky area where you're just not seeing apples to apples. Another mistake is taking your eyes off the fundamentals. Are you staffed correctly for the work? Are your people trained on the jobs they have to do? Are you operating safely? Do you have cybersecurity controls in place? just any slip up on fundamentals is going to lead to a big outage in performance, right? And fundamentals are not glamorous, but consistent attention to fundamentals, that separates winners from the rest of the pack. I guess I'd say finally, I've seen some 3PLs who are good at long-term planning, and I've seen others who are really good at short-term operations. And as a shipper, we need both, right? So we expect and we need both. So a 3PL having equal capabilities, both longer term and shorter term, is really important.
Yeah, got it. All right, Chris, on your side?
I agree with everything Andrew said. One of the things that 3PL runs into, and it's usually early on in the relationship, is, if they've responded to a RFP, and then, you start doing the business, and the business is very different from what you quoted in the RFP. And, you could say, it's a change of scope, or just, as things have gone now with e-commerce, where you were doing full pallet, and then it went to a layer picking, and now each picking, but the RFP didn't, delve into that. And sometimes the business changes. You've got to be on top of it. You got to communicate with the customer. The customer has to be reasonable to say, yes, my business has changed. That's added cost to the 3PL. As Andrew said, the 3PLs, need to make money. So the fair customer will sit down and change the scope. But so often it's not communicated well, sometimes on the 3PL side, and it hurts a relationship, because especially early on, when customer feels, wow, I RFP'd this, they bid the business low, and now I'm in the door. As I said, it's hard to change and move, it's expensive. So now they're hitting me with all these charges and that. And where I say is communicate. Just sit down. We used to open our book, show the customers that, and that's what a true partnership is, and you can avoid those mistakes.
Yeah, that makes sense. And some of it sounds like, is kind of around managing expectations, I guess both, in the RFP at the beginning and then throughout the relationship. So what are some, ways that companies can do that, again, on the shipper and the 3PL side, to manage expectations really well around, touchy things like service levels, cost pressures, and the metrics, and measurement that you touched on before?
The best way to manage expectations, we've always found, and I'm retired, I'll still use we after 39 years, but the best way is to document service level agreements. All the expected cadence against, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, the things we want to talk about and look at in terms of performance. Just these are operational touch points. We look at the measures and where we are. If this becomes tribal knowledge, there's real room for slippage in operations, which can lead to dissatisfaction, and especially when you have people rotation. So the documentation really helps avoid that. And also with these regular cadence reviews of measures, you catch things when they're small, right? Before they become big issues. And small issues are frankly easier to fix. I also it's not enough just to have documented expectations and the drumbeat of meetings and reviews, but also maintaining those documents on a standard cadence, because business needs and conditions are going to change. And frankly, these become great training tools when you have people rotations, and it leads to greater consistency in the operations. And if it's not really clear, these documents are where those details on the measures and the targets and the triggers and the limits for alerts, that's where they're all defined and maintained. So there's there's an absence of doubt of what we're about and how we're measuring things and where we stand. That's how I'd look at best managing expectations.
Yeah. And when you were working with Chris or other 3PLs, what's the frequency that you're talking about, and what would you recommend in terms of meeting or, just reviewing where you are with the service level agreements, reviewing where you are with expectations? How frequently should that be done?
Sure. I would say the best practice, the frequency is going to change based upon what you're reviewing. There should be daily reviews. What happened yesterday? What's the plan for today? And are there any outlook issues, for tomorrow, balance of the week? These are short calls, but they just make sure everyone knows exactly where we stand. Then there's weekly stuff. What's going to happen next week? Are there any peaks and troughs that we have to plan around or try and smoothen? Then you look at monthly. What were our results last month? Are we on track or not? You don't want to look at results daily and weekly because you just get too nervous.
Yeah.
And then quarterly for more strategic things, right? I mean, so it's not, you look at a different cadence for different things and you talk. So the touch points will vary, right? And also the duration of the touch point as well as what's covered. I also think it's really important for good operations that people know exactly what information is expected of them in each meeting, so they come prepared and the meetings are crisp. It's added value. It's not a burden.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Chris, from the 3PL side, what are your recommendations or insights on managing those expectations?
I agree with Andrew. I think the metrics and measurements, one of the things that we did, and I see in a lot of 3PLs as I get through the country looking at other 3PL providers, is, we had a metrics board, right when you walked in the building, and every associate in the operation knew their metrics. And I think that's so important. I mean, it's great for management and the customer to have metrics, but how about the people on the floor actually doing it? So, we measured safety, we measured productivity, quality, damage, all the key factors. But the individual associate knew the goals, the stretch goals. We did a lot of consumer products, so there was a lot of promotional. So, hey, we're going to have a 20% spike at the end of this quarter. What are we going to do to get that done? And well, I'll work a little overtime. People, they were all really engaged and involved. And I think right there, that was the key, that, having the associates on the floor, and it posted that everyone could look. They could walk in the morning and know what, the night shift did, or the weekend shift, because there was always that finger pointing of, oh, they left all the work for us, from the weekend crew and that. But, we solved that, and other 3PL solved that by posting it. And when I would give facility tours, I would have the associates take the potential customer over to the metrics board and have them explain it, that they knew it better than I did. And that really gave a comfort level, with the customer, that they said, well, these people take a lot of pride in their job, and they know what the expectations are from the customer.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's great. I'm going to stick with you, Chris, on the communication side for the 3PL. What are some best practices there? We talked a little bit about communicating the metrics and, maybe monthly reports or quarterly meetings. What are some other communication tips that, you can share from 3PL perspective?
Same thing as Andrew said. We sometimes, with customers, high volume operations, we would have a weekly call to just, at the start of the week, to say, how did we do last week? And then what do we have for this week? And then I always loved, when you got the customer to come to your facility, we used to do a lot of quarterly performance reviews, but the customer was able to come out and kind of kick the tires, see the people doing their work, meet the people involved, and then, they can hear firsthand some of the challenges. And a lot of times the customer, oh, I didn't know we were doing that. We can make an easy change, and you can fix those. So again, communication and measurements are your ticket to paradise there.
Yeah, absolutely. Andrew, anything else on communication from your end?
I think what I would add, Amy, everything needs to be digital now, right? The system should be interconnected. The data should be flowing. Let the system do the heavy lifting in terms of making sure the people who are doing the work have the information they need at their fingertips. So just think about, like, a shipper's order management system is tying to the warehouse management system and the transportation management system, and there's a real-time data flow, right? This is between the shipper and the 3PL and any other transportation suppliers.
And the technology is there, Amy. There's examples that, we've got a teammate filling an order, and, it doesn't show in stock, but with the technology that's today, hey, that's in a truck in the yard. We can get that backed in. We can get that, added to the order, so we're not shipping the order incomplete. So with AI and the technology that's there today. I agree with Andrew. Digital is solving a lot of the small issues that would come up, and it's also giving the customers the instant information that they were always looking for. They would say they could solve so many problems if they knew about it, or if they had the visibility. They could make changes in that. So that technology is there today in growing, and so I think I agree with Andrew. Digital is making the game a lot easier for the 3PLs.
Yeah, it seems like we can never talk enough about visibility. And I guess it could be a two-sided coin. You're saying it does make it easier, but then of course also the demand increases, right? The customer's expecting, well, hey, you have access to every bit of information with all of this technology. So is there more pressure on 3PLs, today to make sure that they have that digital and that technological side to to give the customers the visibility or whatever information, around the clock that they need?
They do, and the challenge for the 3PLs are we sometimes on some agreements it's a 3-year contract, a 3-year service contract, operating contract, and then you look at the investment in the technology that's needed to run the business today. That's where you sit down with your customer and say, look what we could do in technology with this investment, but we can't pay this off in a 3-year service agreement. Let's work together to extend this agreement, enable the 3PL to make the investment in your business that's going to drive the cost pressures and savings that you're looking for, and it's a win-win for both. So I'm seeing a lot of progress in that area, and I think that's again a win-win for the customer and the 3PL.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So let's shift a little bit. Obviously, there are always challenges, and it seems like today there are tons of challenges. Take your pick, right? We have tariff and trade uncertainty. We have, workforce demands. Cost pressures are always there. We touched a little bit on the technology, and AI is really, just every day there seems to be a new milestone that you have to hit, that it's revolutionizing. So I guess, given all of that's going on, what are some of those big challenges, that shippers are facing, Andrew, that maybe you faced towards the end there with P&G? And then, conversely, how are 3PLs uniquely positioned to help shippers work through all of those challenges? Let's talk about the top challenges first. And then, Chris, you can give us some insight on how, 3PLs are working to help them through that.
Sure.
All right, so I think you touched on it. We're in really uncertain economic times. They're certainly very challenging, right? Things are changing rapidly. So everybody needs to drive out every unneeded cost, the things that are non-consumer value added. So we would expect our third-party logistics providers to help us with driving out all unneeded costs. The last thing anyone wants is to be forced to charge the consumer more.
Right.
And right. And speaking of consumer, we're all seeing an increasing B2C, shipping directly to a consumer versus a customer environment. And a lot of these are shipping directly from the DCs, converting them to fulfillment centers. And this is leading to both, shipping more small parcels as well as shorter order to delivery cycles. And Amy, you were talking about visibility. Consumers are getting trained to expect to be able to know, you're 10 stops away, or you'll be delivered within 2 hours, right? People are getting, the expectation levels keep rising. So that's another challenge. I think the last big challenge is a shipper's going to expect a third-party logistics provider to bring innovation that helps reduce the costs and improve operations, including speed. This could include things like inputs on case and pack sizing, display design, just things in the physical logistics area that a shipper may not have the expertise because they rely on it from the third-party provider. So I think that's just another challenge with expected cost, with expected speed, with expected visibility. Providing ideas and innovation that can help a shipper design products and packages that move through the system faster and at lower cost. That's another challenge that we face right now.
So, Chris, we're talking about how 3PLs have to adapt to all of these changing demands, from shipper customers. And Andrew mentioned it, right away. They're looking for innovation. How do you, as a 3PL, get that going in the culture of the 3PL, in the way that you deal with the customers? Where does the innovation come from?
Well, I think, utilizing the latest technologies. I mean, if you look at a DC now, you've got driverless forklifts, you've got automatic unloading, you got just automation. If you get into each picking, you've got, driverless yard tractors. And I think that all takes cost out of the system. And I think that, 3PLs, they're just, some are advanced and doing a great job with it. Some are testing it. But those are the things you've got to step up to the plate and adapt to the latest technologies to drive cost out of the systems. And it's there. And as I said, AI with instant inventory and visibility throughout the systems today, AI is doing so much, for the 3PLs, and they just need to buy in and take advantage of it.
Yeah, it feels like AI is going to very quickly move from maybe something that would make you stand out as a 3PL, like, hey, we have XYZ AI solution, to you better have that or we're not interested. Does that seem fair?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Very quickly. All right. So I want to put it all together now. Say that you're a new logistics manager at a shipper who's kind of just starting out in working with external logistics partners. What advice would you give this person?
The thing I would tell anybody starting out is be sure to learn the operational fundamentals, the flow, the inbound and outbound door management, put away and picking, trailer yard and gate. Technology can do a lot for operations, as we were just talking, but individuals working there need to understand the work that the technology does for you. And there's no substitute for knowing your business. And then I would pivot. Once you know your business, then learn the technology and the opportunities. I mean, there are so many new tools that help with daily work and in a way that can drive productivity and minimize effort. And, all things that are digital or automation, like picking and packing robots, inventory location and slotting tools, the routing of forklifts in the DC and on the road, automated picking, even automated loading and unloading. There's all this stuff that's out there that you can take advantage to deliver better results, right? And I think the other thing I would tell somebody starting out is, the future of human work in a 3PL may shift more towards things like coding and managing automation and systems and robots, but you're always going to benefit from having knowledge and mastery of the operational fundamentals.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Chris, what about from your perspective?
So I would recommend that a new logistics person rolls up the sleeves. What I mean by that is get out, kick the tires, get into the DCs, get to know the people that you're working with. The digital part and the metrics are a big part of the business, but as Andrew said, you still have associates. We used to work with our associates to say technology is a partner. They would worry about, am I going to be replaced by a robot? I see these, automatic trailer unloading, and we'd say, no, there's always, in logistics, there's always jobs for you. We want to take away the manual task jobs, automate those, become more cost effective for our customers, but there's a role for you. So technology is a partner, and get your associates to buy in on that.
Yeah, the whole workforce across all sectors seems to be going in that direction. So it makes sense that it would gel here as well. All right, great. One more question. I just want to look future forward a little bit. What do you see, or how do you see the role of the 3PL evolving over the next few years? Obviously, we talked about the technology component. What are the changes that are coming down the pike, and what does that evolution look like?
As I said, with what you read in the news with the tariffs and the administration wanted manufacturing to grow in the U.S. I think that's a great opportunity for 3PLs to do more services. I mean, we did in-plant services for manufacturer, and there's just tons of opportunities that the 3PL can become more valuable to the customer, especially a manufacturer, and leverage that. And so I think the future is bright. I think they've got to adapt to technology and cost saving initiatives that you're constantly looking at ways to take cost out of the system. But you've got smart technology that can help you do that today, so it's a lot easier.
Andrew, what do you say from the customer side?
When we think 3 to 5 years, I always tell people to get to the long term, we need to make it through the short term. As we've talked, we're amid unusual times with the uncharted tariff environment. I think many companies are going to be cautious in their network design. Therefore, 3PLs can play a vital role meeting the business need while preserving flexibility for shippers who might want in-house capability, but just not sure geographically where to invest. And then I think over the next 3 to 5 years, projections are we're going to continue to see growth of B2C. Why? The convenience. People just become accustomed to shopping online, but also it fits with the gig economy. People work at different times and at different places, and getting to stores sometimes isn't a great fit with their hours. So they like shopping online. And frankly, post-pandemic, most stores shorten their hours, both tied to demand and labor. So for B2C, shippers are going to need high quality 3PL service providers to meet that type of demand. And then I'd also expect over the next 3 to 5 years, we talked about, all things AI and automation, but shippers are going to more and more choose 3PLs that embrace automation and digital tools in a way that show up in results, service, cost, throughput. The AI is beginning to revolutionize capabilities, but what's really important is those capabilities show up in improved results, because that's what really matters to a shipper.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we touched on a lot of really great points, and I think all of the sort of highlights and lowlights of what goes into the shipper 3PL relationship. Anything that we didn't cover? Any parting moments of wisdom that that we didn't touch on?
I'm going to go back to exactly where you started, Amy. The foundation of a relationship is trust and respect. That's not going to change with digitization, automation. It's doing business together as strategic partners in a win-win environment. It's always going to be the connection between a shipper and a 3PL.
Yeah. Chris, you agree?
I agree, and I'd say that there's always the balance of technology and people, that it's a people business, and if you can get your people to do the smart task and technology, the manual task, I think it's a win-win for the industry.
Fantastic. Well, again, thank you both for your time. Great to have you on today. Lots of great insights. I'm sure our audience will really appreciate it. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you both.
Pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.